Chapter 6, the sensory system. We're going to be looking at the eyes and the ears, so ophthalmology and otolaryngology. When you think about your senses, we're going to be focusing mainly on the eyes and the ears here, but your senses include, as you know, your five senses: your sight, your smell, your touch, taste, hearing, and it makes us be able to enjoy the world around us. Okay, hearing the sounds, smelling the food, the soft touch of a kitty cat, being able to see the beautiful sunrise and sunset. We take for granted sometimes the beauty that surrounds us in the world, and that is thanks to our special senses. So let's pay some special attention to specifically ophthalmology and otolaryngology in this chapter, chapter 6. All right, so I wanted to begin first of all with some outer external anatomy, some internal anatomy of both the eyes and the ears. So before we dive in here, I wanted to kind of give you a little bit better picture here. Mm, and discuss briefly some of the outer eye anatomy. So when we look at the human eye, we have upper and lower eyelids, okay, known as your blepharos, the combining form blepharo. So you have the upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, and they join together here on what's known as this lip edge, this lip edge that forms some, not waterproof, but water resistant um, um, with the eye. You have the eyebrow here, which is not shown, that helps to wick away debris and sweat from the eye. You have the cilia, the eyelashes, that also help to protect the eye. You have this outer medial and lateral. So the medial canthus, also known as the inner canthus, medial to the nose here, the lateral canthus, the outer canthus. This is where the upper and lower eyelids meet. So that's pretty much all of the external fleshy anatomy. When you look at the anatomy here of the eye, you have the white of the eye known as the sclera. You have this conjunctiva membrane that is a membrane that kind of surrounds the eye, or the eyelid here. And then, of course, you have some of the eye anatomy here, the colored part of the eye known as your iris, and the hole within the iris known as the pupil. Okay, this term lacrimal, you have several tear ducts. So lacrimo means tear. You have an upper tear duct and a lower tear duct, and we will look at those here. So when we look at the word parts that mean eye, there are three. There's actually more than three, but for our purposes here, we have oculo, ophthalmo, and opto. So oculopathy, okay, ophthalmologist, and optometrist. So, oculopathy, a disease of the eye, an ophthalmologist, a specialist of the eye, and an optometrist. Metry means to measure, so measuring the visual acuity of the eye. So, okay. When we look at the tear ducts that we spoke about earlier, so lacrimal and dicryo means tear. So tears serve many purposes. They help to moisturize the sclera of the eye and the lacrimal glands of the eye, or excuse me, conjunctiva of the eye. They help the eye to be able to move within the eye socket. When we look at a better picture here of the eye and the muscles that help to make the eye move in its ability to move within the eye socket. this movement of actually pulling and turning of the eye requires some lubrication. And so your tear ducts and tears help with that. So lacrimation, the creation of tears, and dacryorea, the overproduction of tears. Okay, dacryo has the word cry or the word part cry in it, which makes sense. We produce tears when we cry. This is the anatomy here of the tear ducts. You have the lacrimal gland here with an upper duct and a lower duct that you can actually see. The duct here, you have an upper duct and a lower duct that feed into this lacrimal sac that then drains into the nasal cavity. So that's why you get a runny nose when you cry. When we look at visual acuity and the ability to see in a vision condition, the suffix is opia or opsia here, can be present and refer to conditions and visual acuity. The eyelid, remember we talked about an upper eyelid and a lower eyelid. The combining form for that is blepharo. So blepharodema, edema meaning the swelling of the eyelid, and a blepharoplasty meaning the surgical reconstruction of an eyelid. Okay. So kind of like an eyebrow, an eyelid lift here, blepharoplasty. When we look at the internal anatomy of the eye, or excuse me, we're still looking at the external globe here. This is a very good picture of that conjunctiva membrane I mentioned before. Okay, it's this the clear membranes that covers the sclera and lines the eyelid. If you've ever had pink eye before, that's known as conjunctivitis. That's inflammation of this membrane. Very itchy, very watery, very contagious. So conjunctivo, that clear membrane surrounding the sclera of the eye here and the eyelid, upper and lower eyelid. And then once you get into internal anatomy, so let me go back here to a better picture and talk a little bit here before we dive into some of the word parts. The internal eye anatomy. Okay, so you have this conjunctiva membrane we just spoke about. You have the sclera, the white of the eye here we spoke about. Now let's go beneath that. Let's go underneath the conjunctiva. Let's go underneath the sclera. And the first window that we're going to get into here is the cornea. And it is the kind of known as the window of the eye here. Okay, the window of the eye. It allows light into the eye. Then you have the colored part of the eye known as the iris. That is technically a muscle. It's a circular muscle with a hole in it, and that hole is the pupil of the eye that allows light to come in, and it can be controlled. So it can be either it can let a lot of light in or very little light in. That light is then going to hit the lens here, which is kind of like a magnifier. It's a refraction, or it helps to bend or refract the light. And notice these suspensatory ligaments here and these ciliary muscles here that attach to the lens can stretch that lens or contract that lens so that it can bend the light in a certain direction and help a person focus. When the light comes through the lens, and if their eyesight is perfect or centered, it's going to hit here on this fovea centralis, this the true center of vision here on the back of the retina. Within the eye here, you have fluid. So you have your aqueous humor and then your vitreous humor that helps to keep the eye globe its shape and helps to compress the retina against the back of the eye globe here. And your retina is simply your neuro layer with the rods and cones that help to um, your photo sensory receptors that help you see in color and in black and white and help turn that light into neurological impulses that then go through the optic nerve here and send that message to the brain so that the brain can then interpret that light image into um, your brain knowing what the image is. In other words, oh, that's a cat, or oh, that's my pencil, whatever it is you're looking at. You also have what's known as the choroid layer. This is the vasculature layer here of the eye, where you have the blood supply to the eye and to the retina. So I kind of wanted to go over some of that internal anatomy. So now that when we look at the word parts for that, it makes a little bit more sense. And you can see some better pictures here. So the combining forms or root words and combining forms for cornea, remember known as the window of the eye. You have corneo and cerato. Corneo and cerato. That term creato does have multiple meanings. You'll hear it. It can mean horny, as in a thick, horny texture of the skin, or like um, um, nails or horns on an animal. So it has multiple meanings as well. So something to think about there, that term cornucopia. Okay. So you see that, and you have the aqueous fluid within that. The sclera, the white of the eye, combining form for that is sclero. So here's another picture of what we looked at earlier. You have the pupil, which is simply the hole within the iris, the aqueous fluid here, and the cornea, the window of the eye. So think about those of you who wear contact lenses. When you put your contact on your eye, you're actually putting it only over the cornea here. So you notice how this is similarly shaped to your contact lens, so it fits right there over that window. And it is an additional refractor or bending of the light before it gets into your lens, whatever corrective measures you need. When we look at the layers of the eye that actually help with the blood supply and that interpretation of the light image, your choroid and your retina. The retina combining form is retino. So retinitis, inflammation of the retina, or retinoscope. Okay, the instrument used to look at the retina. You have the term iris. So you have iro or irido. This is the colored part of the eye that is adjusting the light and adjusting the pupil, the size of the pupil. Okay, and you see that origination there of where that came from. And then the lens, Paco with a C or Paco with a K. So a pacoscope or pacitis is the Greek word for lentil, a type of bean. And if you look at a lentil bean, it's shaped an awful lot like the um, um, lens of the eye. If you've ever been able to see a dissection of an eye, it's kind of interesting to see that shape of the lens. Okay. When we look at the ear, okay, the ear is our auditory, meaning our sense of hearing, and also your sense of equilibrium, your sense of balance. The outer and middle ear, excuse me, the middle and inner ears are responsible for a lot of, or your sense of equilibrium, your sense of balance in the world. In other words, that ability to know that you are sitting down in a chair right now, okay, or you're standing up, whatever, wherever you are in relation to gravity, it is your inner ear and your middle and inner ear that help with that. So let's look at some of the terms related to the ear and then look at some of the anatomy. So RO or OT-O, okay, so aural, means pertaining to the ear. And be very careful here because it looks like, or excuse me, it sounds like oral, ORAL, which means mouth. This is aural, AURAL. So those look alike or excuse me, sound alike. So be careful. Is it oral, meaning pertaining to the mouth, or aural, pertaining to the ear? And then you have otoscope. Auto also means ear, and that's the instrument to look into the ear, which you see here. This is a classic otoscope. Okay, with the light that will shine, goes through the pinna here, goes down the auditory canal, and shines that light into or on the tympanic membrane. When we talk about sound and hearing, so not necessarily the anatomy of the ear, but the process of hearing and the actual sound wave, that is acoustic or audio. So acousto or audio, as in acoustics pertaining to sound, or an audiogram, a recording of sound, which we all love to do. When you have hearing conditions, that can be a suffix known as acusis here. So hyperacusis, excessive hearing condition, or osteoacusis. The term osteo means the bone. So these are the bones of the middle ear that can lead to a abnormal hearing condition. This is what I've been talking about how your ear is divided up into three different sections. You have the outer ear with the external pinna. You have the auditory canal here. This is where your earwax is made, known as cerumen. Your earwax serves the function of trapping debris before it gets into the middle ear here and can damage the tympanic membrane. Okay, so your outer ear, your pinna, and your auditory canal and cerumen. So sound is going to be captured here by the pinna and be funneled into the auditory canal, where it is funneled into the middle ear here, where you have the tympanic membrane. That tympanic membrane is then going to vibrate. That vibration, due to the sound waves, is then going to move your ossicles here within the inner ear. So you have your malleus, your incus, and your stapes, your anvil, your hammer, and your stirrup. But the correct medical term, your malleus, your incus, and your stapes, those bones are going to vibrate, then going to um, uh, carry that vibration into the inner ear. Okay, you see how we're now going to the inner ear through the oval window here. And there again, not to get too technical, but this is your cochlea and your auditory nerves here, where that and your semicircular canals all work together to transmit that. I think there's a better picture right here. Help to transmit that vibration and turn it into a nerve impulse and send that nerve impulse via the cochlear nerve to the brain so that you can then interpret the sound. So you see the cochlea here, your spiral ganglion cochlea, your vestibular ganglion. Ganglia is simply a collection, a bundle of nerves. Okay, and all of that's going to carry that to the brain. All of that is within the inner ear here. You see your semicircular canals that help with your overall equilibrium. So that's how you know you're hanging upside down from a tree, or you know that you're spinning around in circles, or when you're at the state fair and you're riding the gravitron, or the pirate ship or whatever it is that's taking you up and down, and you get off it and you're feeling, oh, I'm a little dizzy. Okay, that's because you have hyperstimulated your inner ear here, and your body doesn't know which way is up or down because it's sending multiple overpowering messages to the brain for a second. So kind of fun too, but it's kind of dizzying. So when we look at, now that we know a little bit more about those word parts, when we look at the individual medical terms for each, the eardrum, you have tympano or maringo. So a tympanostomy, remember that suffix ostomy means to create an opening into, to drain a fluid. So if you ever had ear tubes when you were a child, or if your children have had uh, tubes in their ears, this is where they will put small tubes into the eardrum here through the tympanic membrane to drain some of that fluid here from the middle ear and have it drain out of the ear. Mhm. Cerumen, we talked about a little bit before, the earwax, the eustachian tube, known as salpingo. We have that term salpingo again. That means tube, and it can mean the eustachian tube here in, excuse me, in the inner ear that's going to help drain that fluid. And salpingo can also mean the fallopian tubes in the female reproductive system that carry the egg from the ovaries to the uterus. So that term salpingo, long tube-like shape. Then we look at the inner ear. We spoke a little bit about this. The inner ear combining form is known as a labyrinth. So labyrinthitis, inflammation of that innermost part of the ear. Okay, because it does kind of look like a maze in a way. So it's named after a labyrinth. And then the vestibule. This within the cochlea membrane, you have these internal vestibules, these little rooms. And not to get too technical into the anatomy of that, but the stones and the tiny hairs within that vestibule and within the cochlea help, like I've said, be able to regulate your balance. Okay. And the cochlea, known for snail, the Greek word for snail, because the cochlea kind of does look like a snail shaped. Okay. Learning outcomes, as always, make sure you do them. Okay, let's see if there's any that are standing out here. Let's see, opto eye, oculo eye, vision, tear. Okay. Exercise 3, break down into their word parts here. Pretty straightforward. Optic, pertaining to the eye, blepharitis, inflammation of the eyelid. All right, that looks pretty straightforward. Okay, your word roots that we just went over, irid meaning iris, paco meaning lens, corato meaning cornea. Okay, yep, that should be pretty straightforward. Matching. 13 here. Identify the word parts from the chapter. So opia here, vision condition. That would be what you would underline there. Ophthalmo meaning vision. Okay. Blepharo meaning eyelid. Yep. So all of those that we've covered in this particular chapter. Okay. Moving on. Part 2 here. So when we look at what can go wrong with the eye, obviously, vision can be at issue here. Not everybody is going to have a metropia here, normal vision, okay, perfect 20/20 vision. That term, ametri, meaning normal here. Not everybody's normal. So depending on where the light focuses in the eye, okay, if the focal plane goes past the retina here, then that is hyperopia or farsightedness. If the center of vision or the light focuses before the retina, okay, that is myopia, meaning nearsightedness. So can be corrected with glasses or contact lenses. And remember how I spoke about earlier, how That lens, that corrective lens, comes before the cornea, and you see how that corrective lens helps to bend the light before it goes into the cornea and gets adjusted again with the lens of your eye. Okay, so hyperopia, farsightedness, the light goes past the retina. Myopia, nearsightedness, the light comes before the retina. When we look at some other terms here, amblyopia here, amblio meaning dull. So this is decreased vision, also known as a lazy eye. So one eye, the muscles of the eye here are not pulling the eye correctly. So known as lazy eye, amblyopia. Stigmatism, this is the vision problem caused by that the light rays entering the eye are not focused. So it's another focal point condition. Okay, that's prefix a meaning no, stigmato meaning point. Okay, blepharoplasia here. Blepharoplasia. Blepharo meaning eyelid, plasia meaning paralysis. So this is the paralysis of one of the eyelids here. And we've talked about hyperopia, keratosis. This is pain of the cornea. Remember, kerato means cornea, algia meaning pain. Okay, meiosis here, abnormal contraction of the pupil, usually due to some kind of nerve damage, brain issue. Okay, it is the brain that controls the uh, pupil and the muscles there of the iris, and they are supposed to be similar and consistent. And here in meiosis, they are not. All right. Okay. Mydrosia here, myopia, ophthalmalgia, another eyelid paralysis here, presbyopia, xerophthalmia here. Remember, xero meaning dry. So this is dry eye. Okay. Conditions that affect the ear here. So otalgia, pain of the ear. Presbycusis is the presby here means old age. Cussus means to hear. So this is hearing loss due to old age. Tinnitus or tinnitus here, the ringing of the ears, usually due to uh, overstimulation, so loud music, repetitive loud sounds, and then vertigo, that sense of dizziness, sense of moving when you're not moving. This is an abnormal imbalance of the inner ear that we spoke about earlier, your cochlea, your semicircular canals working correctly. All right, and your learning outcomes related to that. Pretty straightforward. And then 6.3, observation and discovery here. So some other terms related to some of the equipment that might be used to look at the eye and some other eye conditions. So you have blepharotosis. This suffix here, tosis, means drooping. So this is drooping of the eyelid. Estropia, or excuse me, esotropia. Yeah, esotropia. The inward turning of the eye towards the nose. So a little more distinct than what we had earlier as far as lazy eye. So um, this is where one eye specifically turns inward, whereas amblyopia or lazy eye, it can simply go inward or outward. Okay. And here you see the outward turn. So exotropia. So this would be a form of amblyopia, but extropia, meaning the eye is going outward. Nasolacrimal, naso meaning nose. Okay. Ophthalmologist, the specialist of the eye that can diagnose diseases of the eye. The instrument they use to look at the eye would be the ophthalmoscope, the term optic pertaining to the eye, and an optometrist. This term metry or metrist, this is the specialist that measures vision. So optometrists do not diagnose like certain or do not treat diseases of the eye, but they will correct eye vision, if that makes sense. So they write your corrective lens prescriptions and those kind of things. All right. So this is, yep, a condition that is fairly rare, but it's where the conjunctival tissue here extends across the cornea. Terra, pterygium. That one's even a tough one for me. Pterygium. That one, I don't think I've ever seen that one in clinical practice, but it can develop. All right. Other conditions here, looking on to the ear, an audiogram, audiologist, audiometer, audiometry, okay, ceruminosis, excessive earwax, an otolaryngologist, auto meaning ear, laryngo meaning throat, ologist meaning specialist of. So kind of an otorhinolaryngologist here, otorhinolaryngologist, also known as an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Okay, but the medical term otorhinolaryngologist. We talked about the otoscope already, and here's your pronunciation. Okay, so make sure as always you do your learning outcomes, and we will join back up here for chapter 6, part 2, where we will look at diagnostics, pathologies, some other diseases of the eye and ear, and look at specific treatments of the eye and ear.